In today's video, I talked to Alex and Jeanette and I showed them how they can save hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes over the course of their retirement through implementing the right tax strategy. But despite these significant tax savings, this strategy ends up costing them dearly in other parts of their plan. Tune in today to see what this strategy is, what you can do to avoid this tax trap, and how you can still save lots of money on taxes without it costing you your retirement. Joining me on today's Retirement Makeover is Alex and Jeanette. Alex and Jeanette, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Excited to jump in. Do you mind just sharing, you're retired. Do you mind sharing briefly what you did for work prior to retiring?
So I'm an engineer. I retired from an aerospace corporation, local here in the Florida area. Through that, I held various positions. My last position was in program management.
And for me, I've always worked in the medical field. I retired after 35 years at a medical center locally.
Very good. And you both retired recently, correct?
May.
Yeah, in May of this year, yes.
Congratulations. How does it feel so far?
Fantastic.
Feels great. Feels a lot less stress, and always looking forward to plan our next trip.
That's great. Well, let's talk about that. So it feels great. You've been retired a few months now. What challenges do you think about, or what are the things that keep you up, or things that you would love to have resolved when it comes to your retirement planning?
So certainly expenses as we go along, the income that we get from my pension or drawing money from our funds. Certainly it's always a question about, are we have enough to spend to go and do our go activities, go travel? And number two, a challenge that I see always is I worry about taxes. Am I going to be paying a lot of taxes as we go in retirement compared to when I was accumulating and being an employee working for a company? So that's kind of where our challenge is. I want to make sure that we have enough to support our goals and be tax efficient as we go on for the next several years.
Mm-hmm. When you think about tax efficiency, this might seem like a silly question, but why is that a goal for you?
Well, we always pay the fair share, but I always had the goal in my mind, I want to be tax-free. I will always want to have tax-free income. But in our position, in our situation, that may not be achievable. Mm-hmm. And so what I try to achieve and position ourselves, being Jeanette, is how can I leverage and learn strategies that allow us to be a lot more tax efficient? Mm-hmm. Tax gain harvesting, investing in things that allow us to be more tax-free. And of course, the changes in tax laws, it's hard to stay on top of those things. So I see that as a challenge as we go on, that we don't want to get surprised mm-hmm. by paying a big tax bill like what happened this past year. We're doing Roth conversion. I had a huge tax bill. So that set me back to learn more and what are the things that I could do in order to mitigate and be more efficient and pay less tax as possible.
We're going to jump into your actual numbers and your projections in just a second here, but let me ask the two of you this. Let's assume that you could miraculously make the entirety of your portfolio, which you've done well. You have a good, solid portfolio. What if I said today, hey, magically, this is entirely tax-free? What would it change about the way you live your lives, the things that you do?
I actually would not change much. I mean, we have a very happy life, but I think I would think about the legacy, how we transition some of that tax-free earnings and things to our children eventually and our family. Mm-hmm. But certainly it will be, in addition to that, James, it will be a less thing to think about the worry becoming April 15 or next year. Mm-hmm. And where I have to work taxes and figure out scrambling towards the end of the year to figure out scrambling, how can I save them and be more tax efficient? So that will reduce one headache, one worry towards the end of the year in preparation to filing taxes by April 15 of the following year.
Yeah. Jeanette, were you about to say something as well in addition to that?
I agree with him totally. It would put a little bit of relief knowing that we're not going to have that humongous expense.
Yes, there'd be relief. There'd be one less headache. Good to know. So there's a lot you can do with tax strategy. Just to foreshadow, we're gonna look at some of the stuff. Some of these things I believe you've already started doing, but let's jump into it, because one of the goals that's always important to start with, one of the things that's important to start with, is what if we accomplished everything you wanted to do? What would actually change? Would life change in a meaningful way? Would life look materially different? Or why is it that we're pursuing this? And are there other ways of getting to that same desired outcome? Just maybe slightly different approaches to doing so. So let me share my screen here and we'll take a look at your situation. Here is an overview of your portal. So you've done a great job of saving. You have cash in the bank. You have various investment accounts. We can see here, some of these are Roth accounts. Some of these are traditional IRAs. You have a couple of annuities. You both funded the same product, the same amount. So same amounts here. Here's a couple more. There's other Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs. You've got various investment accounts that add up to about $4.4 million, give or take. So that's the base of assets that you have to create the desired income that you have throughout retirement, in addition to the Social Security that you'll have, as well as a nice pension benefit that you have as well. You own your property today. It's worth about 1.8 million. On that property, we're accounting for property taxes, insurance, maintenance. So even once your mortgage is paid off, it's not completely mortgage free today. You still have about 490,000, as you can see here, that we're planning for. But even once that's gone, we do need to continue to plan for property taxes, for insurance, for maintenance, for the cost of living, even if there's no longer a mortgage payment on your property. Here is that mortgage payment that we're looking at here. I'm sorry, 470,000 of this is the mortgage. Then there's a couple of auto loans that will be paid off before too long here as well. But this is just a snapshot of where you are today. Your question is, how do we minimize our tax liability going forward? And how do we make sure that our income can keep up with what we want to be able to do? Because we ultimately want to live healthy, happy lives and be able to do the things that bring the most joy and purpose and contentment to us. So let's take a look at that next. If this is a snapshot of where you are today, this is where you want to go. So retirement, you already retired. Congratulations, a few months ago. Your goals, the first goal is, how much do you need to live on? So this isn't for housing. This isn't the mortgage. This isn't property tax. This is, how much do Alex and Jeanette need to live, to pay utilities, to put gas in the car, to put food on the table, to buy clothing? You have a goal of $3,000 per month right here. How that goal, that number, $3,000, does that allow you to do everything that you want to do? Does that allow you to just barely meet the needs that you have, or is that somewhere in between?
That's actually today, that's what it allows to meet our needs today. But as cost of living and rises that we have seen the last year with inflation has come down, but prices still continue on. I see that monthly expense might grow. So that could put some additional pressure on us. And in the future, if our children end up having grandchild, so that's going to put additional, which I haven't planned as a goal in here.
Jeanette, what about you? As you see at $3,000 per month, do you feel like, yeah, I can, there's nothing that I have to say no to as a purchase? We can do everything that we want to do? Or do you feel like that restricts some things that you would otherwise enjoy doing?
I think that that's a pretty fair amount. We don't live extravagant. We take our vacations, which we've been enjoying since retirement. So I think that's a fair amount. We have what we need, and we don't overspend. So I think that's a very fair number.
Okay. Very good. So we're planning on this: $3,000 per month, $36,000 per year. We are adjusting this for inflation, of course. So $36,000 per year is going to go much further than $36,000 10 years from now will go, or 20 years from now will go. So we keep up with that by adding an inflation adjustment. We're also planning for healthcare costs. So you're on COBRA right now, so your payments are a little lower than they're going to be once COBRA expires. But we're planning for $1,000 per month each, or $2,000 per month combined, for a healthcare premium for the two of you. There may be some planning around there, depending on what your income level is when you do go to get a plan at the marketplace. But In the meantime, we're going to plan for $2,000 per month combined for each of you before Medicare. And then once Medicare starts, we're going to plan for Part B and Part B premiums, of course, but then also another $5,000 per year for each of you of out-of-pocket costs. We're going to plan for joint vacation goals. So just vacation of an extra $10,000 per year on top of this $3,000 per month, on top of the $36,000 per year. So in other words, it's $3,000 per month covers your basics, what you need each month to keep the lights on, to live, then $10,000 per year on top of that. And then we're going to add another $50,000. This is for a car purchase every 10 years or so. So of course, vehicles that you have now aren't going to last forever. Make sure that we're planning for something. And then I see this $22,000 other goal. Is this something specific, or is this just an arbitrary amount to say we want to have something available?
No, I do have a boat, and I think I'm going to have to replace the motor of the boat in a year or two.
Okay.
So I plug that number on it in case I need to repower my boat.
Good planning. We can have the boat going down. What would retirement be without the boat? So that's good. I'm just going to retitle this here real quick. I'll just call it boat expense. We can call this whatever though. So in 2026, you want to plan to have $22,000 available to repair the boat if needed. So those are the goals. Then the income sources that you'll have is you're retired. So there's no more salary coming in, but you do have a pension. And Alex, this pension's already started, correct? The $78K per year?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this pension's coming in. No cost of living adjustments is how it's factored in right now. So that number stays the same every year, but the purchasing power, of course, starts to diminish over time as the cost of everything gets more expensive. And then each of you will also have Social Security. Now, there's a question on when exactly do we collect this, but it's being modeled out as what if Alex collects at age 67? That benefit will be about $3,800 and change per month. And Jeanette, if you collect at 62, that benefit would be about $1,500 and change per month. So that's what we're going to start with in the modeling, but we're going to come back to that and see, does it make sense to do this at a different time? Does all that look good so far? Anything that looks off at all?
No, looks good.
Okay, so we're going to we always go first to cash flows. Cash flows is the basis of everything that's going to come next, of how should you invest? What should your tax strategy be? Maybe most importantly, are you going to be okay? Can you support this for the rest of your life? And so what we do when we look at cash flows is we just want to compare what will your different income sources be throughout retirement to what will your expenses be throughout retirement to ensure that there's income coming in to meet everything. So if we start with income, salary, of course, is gone, but pension is here. So here's that pension, and that you have that in 2024 and every year going forward. So that's a fixed amount, but that fixed amount is going to be there from your pension. Then Social Security. So Jeanette, if you start Social Security, the first year you don't have the full benefit because it kicks in partway through the year, but then you get the benefit that you would be eligible for at age 62. Alex, same thing for you, but at age 67. So you see this year, there's going to be nothing in Social Security. Then you'll have part of Jeanette's benefit. Then you'll have the whole thing. Then you'll have part of Alex's benefit. Then you'll have the whole thing. So that by the time that both of you are fully collecting, that's another $75,000 or so per year, in addition to the pension that you have. Then you have the annuities, and the way these are modeled out is this will become like another pension, but not until later into the future once those annuities are annuitized. But when we look at this, you have a few different income floors. Before even looking at the IRAs and the 401ks and the Roth IRAs, you have the pension, then you'll stack on top of that Social Security, then you'll stack on top of that even the annuities that you have to create another source of income. So when we look at these total income flows in this column, this is that combination of all of those incomes starting at various times throughout retirement. What we want to compare that to is what will your expenses be? So we see expenses of $141,000. That looks like a lot. We just looked at expenses. It's $3,000 per month. What do you mean it's $141,000 to live? Well, the $3,000 per month, that's just your core living expenses. That's a $36,000 per month for food, for utilities, for groceries. On top of that, there's housing. So you have your principal and interest payment on your mortgage. You have your property taxes. You have insurance. You have home maintenance. So these are other things that we're adding in because we have to, of course, pay for housing. Then on top of that, there's the auto loans that you have. Those will be paid off based upon the current payment schedule over the next 2 to 3 years. But we do have to factor those in, of course, as payments until that's done. Then on top of that, there is healthcare. There's insurance premiums. There's these various things. So when we add all that up, Here's what your expenses are. And then on top of those core expenses, we have the extra what we'll call goals. The goal of taking a vacation every year, which is an additional $10,000 per year. The goal of a new car, not every year, but every 10 years. Well, that's $50,000 per year today. If we increase that a little bit each year, that's what it will actually cost to purchase a car in these other years. Other goals. So here's the boat repair. So that's just a one-time thing here, but we're going to still model that out to start to say, in addition to your core living expenses, then add on to that the cost of housing, the cost of healthcare, the cost of certain insurance premiums, the cost of these goals. We start to get a more comprehensive view of what's it actually going to cost to live. Here's an estimated tax payment. This is before any Roth conversions. This is before actually implementing any tax strategy. This is just looking at dividends and interest or the pension income that you have coming in. This is estimated taxes for total outflows or total expenses of $157,663. If you have inflows, so income coming in of this amount, the $43,950 or the net flows column, this shows what do you have to pull from your portfolio to supplement the gap between pension and Social Security and what it's actually going to cost to live. So the first thing of, are we going to be okay? Are we going to make it? Well, the question is, do we have enough in our portfolio to generate these withdrawals and be okay for the rest of our life? And when we look at it, these withdrawals, the first few years start out much higher than the latter years, because in the latter years, well, Alex, your Social Security benefit has kicked in. So that income coming in is offsetting how much needs to come from the portfolio. So you're taking very little. In fact, in some years, you're taking nothing from your portfolio. Then the annuities kick in. You annuitize the annuities, and that's another income floor, to the extent that at some point, once annuities kick in and once you're required to start taking income from your IRAs and 401ks, that's what this plan distribution column is here, starting at age 75, you'll start to see there's actually an excess, a very significant excess of here's the money coming in. And when you compare that to the expenses that you have, not only do you meet all of those expenses, but you actually are projected to have a pretty significant surplus in those years that is above and beyond anything that you're going to need to spend based upon the goals that you have. So the first thing that we look at is, are you going to be okay? Are you on track to meet your needs? Not only is the answer, under these assumptions, of course, yes, but potentially a pretty resounding yes. If you have a very healthy portfolio balance today, about $4.5 million or so, that's just projected to continue growing over time, because on average, the growth that you're getting, of course, is not a guarantee every single year, but on average, the growth that you get is going to exceed the amount that you take out of your portfolio, to the point that you will have you're likely to have significantly more dollars in your portfolio upon passing than you have today going into retirement. So I'm going to come back to that, because this is a very important point, and I think there's some definite adjustments that could be made there. But does that make sense so far before we start looking at tax strategy?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
Is this surprising to you at all? Is this kind of what you already believed would be the case as you looked at numbers?
It surprises me a little bit.
No, it surprises me at the average gain that we will end up that high. Does surprise me a little bit, this scenario.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I'm going to call this a little bit of a problem. A very good problem, but a bit of a problem of is your goal to leave 30, and by the way, this does not include the value of your home, which is appreciated over this time too, but is this the goal? Is this what we're optimizing for, is to leave tens of millions of dollars when we pass? Or are there other things we could be doing to enhance retirement lifestyle today, to accelerate some of that giving, some of that legacy that we want to do, to be whatever it is, more giving, more charitable, more spending on certain things? So I'm going to come back to that, because this is not what I want to see unless this is the goal that you are trying to optimize for. But before that, I'm going to go to a tax tab here to start taking a look at what tax strategies do exist as we look at all this. Now, many of you might be thinking, this looks great, but how do I apply this software to my own specific situation? Well, that's why we created the Retirement Planning Academy. The link is in the description below. In the Retirement Planning Academy, we walk you through step-by-step what you need to do to create your own retirement plan and also provide access to this software. So if you want to apply this to your situation, be sure to check out Retirement Planning Academy. And when I look at the tax strategies that exist, this is what we look at. We start by taking a look at what's your projected taxable income every single year throughout retirement. This purple that you see here, this is your projected taxable income. Let me just move some of these brackets here real quick to not get in the way of that. This is your taxable income. And so where does it start out today? Well, it starts out lower. This is primarily going to be your pension plus some dividends and interest. And then when Social Security kicks in, your taxable income bumps up a little bit. Then when the annuities kick in, your taxable income bumps up even more. Then when required distributions kick in, it really bumps up. And so a lot of tax planning has to do with looking into the future and taking an educated guess as to what will things look like when you're forced to start taking distributions out of your portfolio. Well, right now we can see that, yes, these numbers here are bigger than these numbers, but what we really want to know is where does this fall in the various tax brackets that exist today? So if we start to overlay the 10%, the 12%, the 22%, 24%, these almost certainly will change several times over the course of your retirement. So this isn't us trying to predict where will things be at the time as much as it is just looking at what do we know to be true and what are some good planning points we consider today. And what I mean by that is, what if we say we're going to look to the future and we can start to see, my goodness, we're going to be well into the 28% tax bracket later on in retirement. Today, we're in the 10% marginal tax bracket. Are there things that we can do today to pay taxes at the 12% rate to avoid having to pay taxes at the 28% bracket in the future? That's really where we want to start with. And the reason for that is, if we look at what the total taxes that you pay might be, it might be fairly significant. So as we start looking at this, we see that you have much higher taxable income in your later years than you do today. And for comparison, if we look at that and what that might mean, your required minimum distribution, this is, at age 80, if you do nothing, is projected to be $368,000. At age 85, if you do nothing, it's projected to be almost $500,000. In other words, hey, you have your pension income, you have your Social Security income, you have your annuity income, and by the way, you're going to be required to take $500,000 more dollars on top of that. Like I said before, not the worst thing in the world. You're never going to go bankrupt because of these required distributions. It's the byproduct of having a lot of money in your IRAs. What it does mean is you're paying taxes on $500,000 that you didn't necessarily need to take out to meet your needs, because between your pension and your Social Security and your annuities, you are pretty well covered, assuming expenses stay about the same as they are today. So what we want to do today is we want to say, what can we do to reduce the impact of some of those required distributions? So one of the things that we look at is, can you fill up different tax brackets? This was your point, Alex, before I started talking of, can we fill up certain tax brackets to pay taxes today at a lower rate than we would otherwise pay in the future? So if I look at this, of what if every single year that you were below, let me actually go to this page. What if every single year that you're below the 12% bracket, you converted just enough from your IRA to your Roth IRA to fill up the 12% bracket? What would that look like? Well, if you did that every year and we refresh this, that leads to about $414,000 more tax adjusted dollars at the end of the day than you would have if you didn't do anything. So put another way, $414,000 more tax adjusted ending dollars doesn't mean $414,000 more dollars. It just means the adjusted value of those dollars. And so for some context, what that means here is you have more dollars, you paid less taxes, and there is $653,000 fewer dollars that you took from tax deferred accounts. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, what if we took that a step further? What if instead of converting up to 12% bracket, we converted up to the 22% bracket? Well, now all of a sudden, that's 1.3 million more tax adjusted ending assets. And by tax adjusted, what I mean by that is, if you have $1 million in an IRA and $1 million in a Roth IRA, technically that's zero more zero more dollars. It's the same amount of dollars. But one of those is worth a whole lot more because one is tax-free and one is fully taxable. So this is looking at the tax adjusted value of your dollars. That's really significant. So as we start to look at this right off the bat, yes, can you do a Roth conversion strategy? It absolutely appears that's the case, and it could save you quite a bit of money. Does that make sense so far? I'm going to tie this back to what we started with in terms of your spending before we go much further.
Yes, that's very revealing to do that type of exercise and seeing graphically in the tool as well too. You see that those as a comparison, the differences. Very interesting.
It's a big difference. Now, here's what I'm going to say. I don't want you to get this much benefit from a tax strategy, and not for the reasons you're going to think. It's not because I think you should pay more in taxes. I actually want you to do this because I'd rather you do something else instead. And what I'd rather see you do instead is not pass away with $30 million left to children or charity, whatever it might be. I would rather see you spend a bit more, because that will have some impact on some of these tax strategies, even to the extent it might lower the impact of them. But what we're optimizing for, the North Star here, the North Star isn't how do we die with as much money that's tax-free as possible. It's what can we do to get the most out of life with our money. So I'm going to ask you this. Today, we're planning on you spending $3,000 per month, $36,000 per year. If I said, Alex, Jeanette, you have to spend $100,000 per year instead of $36,000. And if you don't, we're going to stack that money in your backyard and we're going to burn it. You're not saving it. It's literally going to go away. Could you find things to spend money on if you were given an ultimatum to have to spend it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can. Definitely.
What would you spend it on?
Well, for me, I'll think of my kids. We have 3 kids in college, so it would be to help them.
Buy them a car.
I have a daughter that just got married last year, so it would be to help her. So that would be my first thought. They're all going to need cars, so it would be nice to help them in some way. That would be the way I could think of to spend the money.
Yeah, love
And
it.
for you?
I would buy a condo on the ocean, on the beach. Yeah, I think I would buy a second home on the beach.
Well, here's why I'm at. $100,000 per year is about $8,300 per month. Somewhat of an arbitrary number still, but it's almost, not quite, but almost triple what you're spending today in your budget. If we reran this and said, okay, what if you spent $100,000 per year on yourselves as opposed to $36,000 per year? Yes, it means there's a lot fewer dollars at 90, but there's still a lot of dollars. And you're not going to look back and say, wow, we have $30 million and we're 90. What can we really do with it now? You're going to be able to look back and say, how meaningful was it that we could help our kids when they needed it? How meaningful was it that we could maybe get that condo on the beach and enjoy the memories of that when it could? How meaningful was it that we could give more, that we could spend more, that we could do more to actually enjoy retirement? Because here's the trap that so many people like you that have lived within their means, that have done really well, that have prioritized saving, that have prioritized investing. There's this trap of what we've been optimizing for has been so heavily focused on the investments that our mindset continues there. And we build a great plan and a great strategy, and this money becomes tax-free to a certain extent and it just grows and grows and grows. Then we wake up one day and say, well, wait a minute, our portfolio is great, and our life is good, but it could have been much better. We could have done much more. We could have helped much more. And so that's really a trap that's somewhat socially acceptable, because great, keep building your portfolio, keep doing the right thing. But we want the tax strategy to follow a plan that's more optimized for what do you want your lives to look like. Here's the actual impact this would have on tax strategy. So let's assume that you do this. You walk away today and you add another, what is that? Almost $64,000 to your budget each year. So have $36,000 per year. It's $100,000 per year. So you got another lots of money to spend each year. If we go back to this tax tab today and we start looking, okay, how does this impact some of the tax strategy? Well, if we look at this here, this is what we were at prior. You had a lot of money saved through implementing tax strategy, like what we're looking at. If you do it now, this just cost you several $100,000 in lost opportunity when it comes to tax savings. So this is why I call it the trap, is if we're optimizing for tax savings, nothing wrong with trying to get tax savings, but if that's the primary focus, it means that things that are actually more important, like quality of life, like what we can do with our family, like what we can do with our children, takes secondary importance, and it restricts what we can do there. Whereas if we're optimizing for what actually makes most sense and what actually leads to higher quality of life, you can still get tremendous benefit from the right tax strategy, but it's going to reduce it. So the key here is, how do we start by understanding what do we actually want life to look like? Because you have the portfolio to justify it. If you didn't invest what you have saved and you have invested, you wouldn't have the flexibility to save a whole lot more than you're actually projected to. But because you do have a healthy portfolio and a pension and Social Security and annuity, so you put yourself in this position, you have the ability to create maybe a better retirement personally. And then based on what that looks like, then we back into what's the right tax strategy with this in mind? What's the right investment strategy with this in mind? And it still exists, but it's going to look a little bit different depending on what we're ultimately optimizing for. But does that make sense as we're going through this here?
Yes.
Yeah,
it does
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that would be my guidance to you is, yes, absolutely implement tax strategy. Absolutely look to convert assets from your IRAs to Roth IRAs. Absolutely do some of these things that are nothing less than low-hanging fruit to take advantage of to add value to your plan. But only do those after you've sat down and talked about, what do we actually want to do? How can we make retirement the best it could possibly be for us, for our family, for those around us, for our community? Start there. Once you have that in place, then we work into the investments, the taxes, the protection, all those things that are then used in service of the primary goal or in support of the primary goal, as opposed to them being the primary goal. So that is it for today's Retirement Makeover. Alex, Jeanette, thank you so much for joining. I want to just say again, thank you. This allows not only the three of us to connect, but all the people watching to be able to tune in and to see what you're doing. So thank you very much for taking the time to join today.
Thank you for
James.
having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Root Financial has not provided any compensation for and does not influence the content of any testimonials and endorsements shown. Any testimonials and endorsements shown have been invited, have been shared with each individual's permission, and are not necessarily representative of the experience of other clients. To our knowledge, no other conflicts of interest exist regarding these testimonials and endorsements. Once again, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Root Financial get the most out of life with their money, be sure to visit us at www.rootfinancialpartners.com.